Good day and welcome back to the Building Bigger Lives podcast. I'm Michael Regan along with Kathryn Pedersen. And as we like to do from time to time, we're bringing a friend into the show. And this friend will be not only a guest you'll enjoy hearing from, but I think you'll start to see, as our theme has continued with our guest, another top performer in the housing industry who has found some unique ways to retain his unique abilities. And I want you to hear those stories because a lot of what you're going to hear from Russ Laing is going to blow you away, not because he's doing something so unbelievable, but because he's really, really incredible at being authentic. And I think you're going to find that out pretty quickly as we bring him into the frame. But before we do, let me welcome my friend and my fabulous co-host, Kathryn Pedersen.
Hey, good to be here today. I'm excited to chat more with Russ. We've all known him for a long time, so I'm glad that we get to introduce him to all of you. So, with that, welcome in, Russ. Thanks for being here. And I'm going to just shoot a question right at you to get us going. So, this is maybe a little different than what Michael normally starts things with, but one of the things I've been wanting to ask you is you have a different perspective. I remember in a roundtable we did, you are so good at questions and you're so good at curiosity. And tell me a little bit about where you think that came from.
Well, thank you all for having me. By the way, I really appreciate that. Let me see if I can answer that question. I think probably it's just my lack of, well, my belief maybe that getting in this business, and I've been in this business 22 years, but I still sometimes feel like a rookie, and I still sometimes feel like there's so much I don't know that I think even when we had our roundtable a few years ago, some of the ideas that were coming out of that, I was shocked and surprised and just realized how much other people were doing, especially with technology that I didn't even know existed. Um, so that was unique to me, and that's why I probably asked a lot of questions, and I still feel like I'm the green one around the table sometimes when I hear other people talk, and I'm like, where did they learn this? How did this come about? So I feel like I'm still learning a tremendous amount every day.
All right, well, let's get the audience to maybe learn a little bit from you because you may want to play the green banana, the rookie, whatever you're calling yourself. But let's make sure we don't, since you won't break your arm patting yourself on the back, let me just remind our audience. Russ has been at Network Funding for a long time. And during that time, he's been the company's top producer. What now, Russ, 4 or 5 different times? I mean, it's
5 times, yeah.
there we go.
Yeah.
So this is not a guy who just fell off the turnip truck. When he's telling you he was surprised by some of the things he was hearing from his peers, it's not because he doesn't have a success story. It's just he's chosen to do it in a way that might be different than other folks. And that's what I want to learn from Russ, because some of those things you do that feel wildly normal to you might be refreshing to our audience to hear. Tell them a little bit about the way you've built this business that's capable of closing over 100 million a year and has several times. What are some of the pillars of your business model? How have you built this business, and what does it look like so our audience can get a sense of what you're really doing?
Well, thanks, Michael. You know, I, I feel like it's just kind of been old school methods. I mean, I think number one, it's really the foundation is doing the right thing for the client. I used to work at Bank of America years ago in their banking system, and at one point back in the year 2000, they came out with a motto that it was just said, doing the right thing. And I kind of brought that into this business to say, well, let me just do the right thing for the client. No matter what the situation is, let's do the right thing. And then secondly, it was just about trying to build relationships with referral sources the old-fashioned way, right? It's going to lunch with industry referral partners. It's answering texts and emails back, and it's returning calls. I mean, sometimes I think even the basic things in our business people don't do, which really surprises me, is just returning emails and returning calls in a timely manner. So there's nothing magical about it. I think it's that's been the foundation of what's helped me grow my business. It's just old fashioned responding to people, meeting people, having lunch with people, returning phone calls, the normal things that you would think just are logical. But that's really kind of the basis of where my business has grown from.
Yeah, I'm going to split your answer into two camps. On one hand, I'll agree. It is a little old school. On the other hand, I will disagree. It is not normal. In fact, we've got a world that is so distracted by bright, shiny objects, so distracted by their tech stack, so many options to choose from. And you've somehow blocked that out. I mean, Kathryn, you've spent time with Russ. You've seen this as well. And I think of you uniquely in this category, given that we've talked about kind of small town, big life. You live in what most people would say is a tiny population, and yet it's a really unique population. And same thing, you've been able to develop these really great interpersonal relationships. So now we got a guy in Austin, Texas, big town, gal in small town. Is there something to this, Kathryn? The idea that maybe not everybody has to be on the bleeding edge of technology to be successful in this game? I mean, how are you responding to that?
So I would say that something that I've always liked Russ for is just that authenticity piece that you kind of have to have in a small town because people will figure you out really quickly. But Russ has said, at least I think to himself, we'll see if he agrees with me, that you just do what's right for people and it'll come back and serve you no matter if you live in a small town or a big town. You do what's best for the client. And I think that's where his curiosity comes in. If you're curious about people, you get to learn about them and you create those tight relationships that probably hold, so much weight down the road when you might run into a tough situation. Say, hey, I need to call Russ and see how he would get through this, or hey, I need to figure out what he would do in this loan, or if he can help these clients. So I think it's just that trust piece that I can imagine Russ is really good. So with that, Russ, tell me what you think. Like I know that you're one of those people that people know is just what you are in a great way and so kind. So how are you kind of practicing that other than just returning calls? Because I know there's more to it that you're doing for clients that we may not even realize that you're doing.
Well, thanks, Catherine. You said some very nice things, so I appreciate that. You know, I think transparency is maybe a big part of that. I try not to, obviously we don't what we do in the mortgage business is not perfect, right? And doing this as long as I have, I'm surprised at times that I'll make a mistake that I'm like, how did I make that mistake? How did I not see that? How did I not look at that? And my wife, who's a loan officer too, I might tell her and she was like, how did you miss that? And I'm like, I don't know. But sometimes being honest with the client about that to say, hey, I missed this. I was wrong about this. I need to fix it. I'm sorry. Telling the real estate agent involved in the transaction if I've got to extend a closing because of a mistake I made. I think being transparent about the mistake and being honest about what happened rather than trying to put the blame on somebody else, whether it's the client or an underwriter or whatever the case may be, I think that is very important. And I found in doing that, people are more willing to accept that when I accept responsibility for where I've erred. People are more willing to overlook that and say, okay, I forgive you. Let's fix the problem. And so I think that maybe helps to add to the rapport along the way. And maybe down the road, that agent or that client who's referring their family member might go, hey, I remember this guy was pretty transparent. He didn't blame me. He didn't try to put it on somebody else. He just took the blame and try to fix the problem. And sometimes I find in being honest with people, sometimes they can help you fix the problem too in a way that you didn't think of if you just make them part of the solution. So that's kind of been my attitude of saying, let me just be real about this because we're all in the same boat trying to make this happen. We all win if it works.
Russ, as I'm listening to you, I'm remembering back when I met both of you. So back in the 2000 teens, 15, 16, 17, in that window, I was reading a book by Pat Lencioni called The Ideal Team Player. And Pat described the ideal team player as hungry, humble, and smart. And as I'm listening to you respond to Kathryn, I'm thinking, I don't know why you didn't write this book, Russ. You've got it in droves. You're a driven guy who's clearly producing at the top of his game, but you remain humble. Your ego's in check. You're even saying things like, sometimes I make a mistake. Sometimes my client can help me figure it out if you're just, honest about, like, this is the style of someone who stands in contrast to maybe some of the audience who's thinking, yeah, never let them see you sweat, or, oh my gosh, I've got to have every answer. The truth is, you're figuring it out, and I think it goes right back to what Kathryn said. Your authentic style is winning the day. Another thing I noticed about you back in that, by the way, I said hungry, humble, and smart. You're also incredibly smart, both in intelligence and in human intelligence. I think your emotional intelligence is also well noted. Russ, when I met you, I was learning about some of your unique ability, and I started using this phrase that we grabbed, I don't know, whatever that was, 8, 9 years ago. And I said, Russ, you're really a deal maker at heart. And back when we came up with that phrase, it was in this context. I think a lot of your referral partners really value the fact that while lots of lenders have rates or speed or whatever they've got, communication, those are things that anybody technically can have. You somehow have this unique ability to retain all of that and get deals done in ways that other folks struggle with. What's the secret behind that for you? Why are you uniquely gifted at that ability to see the same information that everybody else sees in a borrower, but you know how to put that deal together in a way that that agent is confident my client's going to win? I think that's a special thing about you that maybe doesn't get talked about enough.
Well, thanks, Michael. Again, appreciate all that you're saying. Wow, that makes me feel good. Thank you. Back, I don't know if you, and I'm sure you remember this, in our coaching time frame, and I don't know, I feel like I've been coaching with you maybe a decade plus.
We're in that range.
Yeah, there was a turning point for me in my production, and it was around the time that you helped me define who I am in this business. Prior to that, I was really struggling with who I needed to be because, I saw some of my lender counterparts that were out there, and they were, you know, they had a team of people, right? And they were out in the market. They weren't really looking at the deals, pricing the deals. They were just out there schmoozing with the agents, saying, call my people, they'll set it up. I was actually shocked that some of these lenders weren't locking their loans in. Um, but that wasn't me. Like I felt like I needed to be that person out in the market, but it wasn't me. I'm not an extrovert. I'm kind of lean more kind of introvert. Um, but I do like analysis. I enjoy looking at guidelines. I enjoy putting a deal together, analyzing the data, figuring out a solution to a problem. That's who I was. And you helped me see that. And I think once I learned that was me, and I was more of a deal maker and not the guy out at every gathering and party touting who I was, my production went up. And in 2018, I think 20, I want to say 2015, 16, 17, and 18, I did about 50 million a year each of those 4 years. And then in 2019, I did almost 100 million.
Mhm.
And that was around the time we determined that this was who I was. And when I started running my business that way, it actually increased my business almost double the next year. And I've stayed at a constant, solid level since that time. So, um, learning that that's who I was and really honing in on that to say, look, I'm here, I'm looking at the deal, I'm going to lock it in, I'm going to make it happen. I'm at the forefront. I put in all my own applications. I kind of work it that way, and that's who I like to be. And I've decided that's who I'm going to be in this business, and it's made a difference.
So, two things I want to make sure people caught. A, who Russ is versus who the industry wanted him to be or he thought he should be for the industry. And I think that leaning into who you actually are can make such a difference because it reduces the waves in the ocean, right? Instead, you're just sailing instead of fighting against doing things that are uncomfortable or don't come naturally. So I think that's the amazing thing about having a coach who can point out the obvious, but it may not be obvious to us, right? Like, oh, I didn't even know that about myself. I had no idea that this is a unique ability, right? We just think everyone else does it the same way. But also that's what's so great about mortgage is you can do the business in any way that works. You don't have to be any version. You can be the version that's best for you. And that's where you're going to succeed. And that's, I think, why Russ has such a great story that we want to share. And I think it's realizing, oh, I don't have to do things the way everybody else does. I can do them the way that works for me and my clients. And that's great because they're going to feel like clients can feel when you're in your lane, right? They can know like, wow, you're so good at this versus if you're doing something that's so uncomfortable, it's never going to feel right to either party. So I think that that's something really important to share. And I think some of that comes from that confidence. So I'm kind of curious when you and Michael were going through that, how are you able to say, oh, yeah, that is me, or oh, I'm confident in taking my own path. So kind of how did you get off of that? Because I think sometimes people get so stuck in, well, this is what all the experts are telling me to do. So how did you kind of move off of that?
Yeah, it felt, I think when we kind of decided that that was the role and who I was, everything kind of fell into place. It just fit right. It felt right for me. I was fighting against myself on thinking I needed to be someone else, again, out in the market, pushing people to my team when I knew what I enjoyed about the business. And I guess let me step back a second. I wouldn't have enjoyed doing what I didn't want to do. And then I kind of thought, well, why am I doing this? Why am I in this business if I'm doing what I don't like doing? I mean, if I've got to go out and call 50 realtors a day and get out there and go to all the gatherings and push into my team and go and play golf, and that wasn't who I wanted to be. And I just was like, well, then maybe I need a new career if I don't enjoy doing that. Let me do what I enjoy, so let me find what I like about the business and do that part of the business. And I think once Michael, it was kind of an aha moment Michael, when we talked through that and Michael said, maybe this is who you are. And then it allowed me to structure the team around me being that. Because before I was trying to maybe build a team that was going to look different. And with me being in a different role that I didn't want to do, that I just was like, this is not enjoyable. Once I found what I actually enjoyed and said, let me focus on what I enjoy, then I could build the team to match that. And once we did that, it clicked into place and it felt right. So it was kind of about just saying what feels right about this, what clicks, what feels good, what do I enjoy doing. Now, it doesn't mean I don't need to do things out of my comfort zone because I still do that, but I now know who I am, and since I've known that, it's been able to help me grow my business.
I love hearing you recount that answer, Russ, because that brings back a lot of memories of that
Hmm.
season when we were working through that. And Kathryn, you asked an excellent question. I'm so glad that Russ continues to hold the same answer that I remember from, 8 years ago, because the truth is in that answer, and I hope our audience hears this loud and clear, is, there's an old Jim Rohn quote. There are enough people who want to do business the way I like to do business to not worry about all the ones that don't. And I hope you can retain that abundance mindset. If you're out there today listening to Russ's answer, I hope that's inspiring you to realize, hey, great. There are different ways to win in this game. It's not always the same ways. Let me test this theory real quick, Russ. How many followers do you currently have on TikTok?
None.
Well, what are you not spending time on TikTok?
I'm not on TikTok at all. Yeah.
Fair enough. That wasn't a scripted question, but I think I knew the answer. It doesn't mean, by the way, if you are out there on TikTok, that that's a bad thing. It means to thy own self be true. Like just know who you are. And that's the beauty of the exercise we went through is I wasn't worried about aiming you at an answer. I was more worried about can we get you to be honest enough in some of these questions we were asking to where I could see it clearly and then just say, that's it. Grab that. Focus on that. And Kathryn, I won't put words in Russ's mouth. I think what I saw when we went through this was a great sense of relief. Like all of a sudden he was like, wait a minute. You mean I can just double down on being me and design it that way? And I said, Russ, what? Why not? Just because the world is going left doesn't mean you can't choose to toe to the right because there are other people, customers, referral partners who will value that because they'll say, yeah, I know I can do everything with a bot these days. I know that exists. I just don't want to. It's not that it's not faster. It's not that it's not cheaper. It's that I don't like the experience. I actually want to come into your office at Vista Lending in downtown Austin and see your pup and be able to sit across the table from you and let's talk about my mortgage plan. That's a beautiful thing that in a high-tech city like Austin really stands in contrast to a lot of your competition, Russ. So it's really great to hear you recount those stories.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kathryn, as you look into the future of this business, I know you have some thoughts on this. So I'd love to hear your input on this as well. But Russ, look out as we sit here in the summer of 2026 as we're recording this, and who knows when. So maybe someone will come back 5 years from now and listen to this on our podcast app and say, "Well, what did those guys talk about? Were they even in the ballpark?" But what do you see when you look into the future, knowing that you've stayed authentic? I'd love to hear both of your answers on this. What do you see is the future for the authentic mortgage professional? Where does the world evolve in the next 3 to 5 years? And where will you play?
You know, I don't know how long the world has been in existence, but I I think people were designed to meet, to talk, to have real dialogue. And I do think that obviously with AI and all the technical developments, those are tools that are going to be great, but I think people are still going to want to get back to foundational interactions. And so I find, and this has surprised me, but over the last few years, I feel like I've heard a lot about millennials. Millennials want technology. Millennials want, to go online and do this. And what I find most often is millennials are not like that. Millennials actually want to meet in person. They want to have a phone call. They want to have that interaction. And so it makes me believe that the next generations are going to be the same. I mean, we have enough technology, but I think at the end of the day, people still are refreshed by face-to-face interactions. And I don't think that'll ever go away. I think that's how we're designed to do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Powerful.
So, and I'm going to just add that the question I ask myself is how do you know something's authentic? And it's really hard to tell that online. It's hard to tell that on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I get caught by it, right? So the only way to really know something is authentic is when it's right in front of you and you can feel it. And I think that's why I think both Russ and I are seeing more in-person meetings. I have more now than I have in years. And I think it's because you get the 360, you can read people's expressions, you can feel how they feel. And so I think that gives the authentic originator a little bit of a heads up and or like a leg up as far as, hey, we're gonna have that advantage if we can really push on that skill. So just to add that to Russ's answer.
Yeah, it's great to hear both of you say versions of a similar answer because I think somewhere out there our audience is going, wait a minute, that's a contrarian view from most of the other housing industry podcasts I listen to. And I want to be clear, as a coach, I'm in the neutral category. If you're on the bleeding edge of using technology to lead generate or to even operate these days. I mean, it's really incredible to see what some of these tools can do to handle the back end of the process. My answer isn't one is good, one is bad. My answer is back to what you've just heard both of them talk about is what is your why behind it? And if your why is in alignment with who you are, then maybe you'll choose to go down that path. But if it's not, I hope you have some courage today hearing from Russ Laing and really hearing some affirmation from Kathryn that there are other ways to win in this business because there's an audience. I go back to your answer, Russ. There's an audience of people who something in them craves human interaction. And we could get into the why behind that, and that could be a whole nother topic. But I don't think it's deniable. I'm a music fan. I'm seeing it all the time in the music industry. We've got AI technology that can create bands that don't exist, recording albums that weren't ever recorded in a studio, and publish the music and distributing it on channels to where you can download it today. And it's an endless stream of excellent music, meaning technically speaking, it's excellent. There's no soul in it. There's no storyline behind it. And the audience is quickly rejecting it as they're saying, you know what, that's not real. They want real. And Russ Laing, that's what I hear. You're real. And for the audience that is tuned into you, that's what they love. So as we wrap up today's episode, any closing thoughts you'd like to share? Because you can imagine there's someone out there today who's probably sitting back in their chair going, uh-oh, I got to rethink this whole thing. I've bought into something I don't want to be. You know how that felt 10 years ago. What's your advice for that person who might be listening today?
You know, I think, Michael, for any mortgage originator out there, or whether it's a real estate agent or anyone in business, I think the number one thing is taking care of the client, treating them like you would want to be treated. And I think if you make that your foundation, I think the rest of it is probably going to fall into place. Just figure out where you want to be in that formula, at which part of that you want to be part of, and make sure that your team follows suit. I think if you do that and don't chase the money, right? But chase the relationship and the client, I think you do that, things are going to work out just fine for you. You're going to have success.
Great. Well, I think we've gotten to see just a tiny bit of Russ. We might need to have him back to explore a little bit more because I feel like it just created like more curiosity. So there's that, but I'm sure that we'll get him back on down the road. So, but it's starting to get close to the end of our time here. Michael, any last minute thoughts before we close it out?
Yeah, I'll just say this, Russ. You know I love you, and you know I appreciate you. But I'm really, really thankful that you took the time to just share a glimpse of your story. We didn't even get into a guy who grew up on the continent of Africa and is here in the United States with a story that is really one of those amazing success stories. We didn't even get into some of the other topics that you and I can get into. Music is one of them, but we've got a lot of others that we do. So Kathryn's right. I hope if this was comfortable, you'll come back and we'll pick a different topic. But thanks for sharing a little bit about your story and how you've uniquely succeeded. I really do appreciate that. It's great to have you with us today.
Thank y'all so much. I appreciate it very much.
All right. Well, with that, I'm going to close out this episode of Building Bigger Lives. You can find us on all the platforms. Please comment, please share, and thank you so much for listening.